In case you missed it, here's Dave and Cheryl's favorite moments of the week.
Well, we've got some health news about how to try and push yourself forward, especially if one of your thoughts going into the new year was exercising a bit more.
And when it comes to starting to exercise, there are apparently 2 fundamental rules you need to follow. 1, choose an exercise you enjoy, and 2, set yourself up for success. So when it comes to choosing an exercise you enjoy, I mean, exercise is such a loose definition. I know so many people think you have to go to a gym, join a gym, but that doesn't necessarily have to be it. It can any kind of physical activity that increases aerobic health or endurance, balance, strength, and or flexibility.
Maybe you're doing a little bit of yoga at home. I know the yoga studios have been open and shut. Maybe you're just taking your dog for more walks than you might normally do. That all counts.
Maybe you're doing some work in the yard. This time of year, shoveling the driveway and the sidewalk.
Yeah, you'll be getting lots of exercise probably over the next 12 hours. And the other big tip has to do with setting yourself up for success.
What this means is you start by doing something you know you can do that doesn't take a lot of time and is realistic. And then you sort of work up from there. So if you have been very sedentary, aka you haven't been moving very much, don't all of a sudden be like, I'm going to go run 5K. That is not realistic.
I was just actually talking to my niece about that when we went up to Sudbury a few days back, because she was like, well, I'd love to run, but I just don't know where to start. And I said, you got to start small, right? Like when I first started, part of my motivation was I went to St. Clair College and signed up because some other people I knew did it. And it was like a couch to 5K thing. Mm-hmm. And so you learn to walk and then run a little bit, but it also set an appointment for me because it wasn't that expensive, like $40. But I thought, well, I got to go because I paid that money.
There was a great podcast I was listening to, and they said, like, say you want to be like, I want to go to the gym 3 days a week. Okay, great. The first step for just to get yourself in the habit was just getting in the car and driving to the gym. They're like, you don't even have to get out of the car and go into the gym. Just drive to the gym, because you get into the habit of, you get home, you get changed, you get in your car, you go to the gym. That is a huge hurdle for a lot of people. Then after that, it was go into the gym, do one exercise, and then leave. And then you build from there, right? And after a while, you'll be like, well, I'm not going to just do one exercise. So then you do a couple more, stick around. They're like, you start with 15 minutes, 30 minutes. You work your way up.
I mean, we're inundated by all of these photos of people that are ripped and, look fantastic. They had to take time to get to that themselves too, right? So baby steps with whatever you choose to do. Hey, if this is true, this is a wild way to go viral. The FAA is investigating a YouTuber and a former Olympic snowboarder by the name of Trevor Jacob because he may have crashed a plane on purpose in November just to go viral.
So back in 2014, Trevor barely missed out winning bronze at the Winter Olympics. Now he runs a very popular YouTube channel and a website called adventured.com. Well, back in November, he was by himself flying a single-engine plane from the California coast to Mammoth, which is where a lot of winter sports happen up in the mountains there. But halfway there, he bailed out, jumped out of the plane with a parachute on in the middle of nowhere, and the plane hit a mountain. So Trevor actually had to hike out and find help, but he caught the whole thing on video because he had cameras set up everywhere because, he runs this YouTube channel.
He had cameras all over the plane, though, so it got it from multiple angles, which is why people are saying this is kind of bizarre. They think maybe he staged it because pilots don't usually fly with a parachute on. Plus, he just bought the plane, which was in, quote, disrepair, and he told the seller he was planning to, quote, do something special with it, but didn't elaborate.
Not to mention, too, he did this all on November 24th. The 50th anniversary of the D.B. Cooper, the guy who hijacked a plane in 1971, collected $200,000 in ransom, then jumped out, never to be seen again.
So did he orchestrate the whole thing? Well, if he did, he could actually be looking at jail time. The FAA might take a while to weigh in on this one because, of course, now they're doing an investigation, and that could take quite some time to figure that all out. Now, he basically came out and said he's always flown with a parachute on because he's always worried that what if something did happen, then he's ready to go in case he needed to bail out of a plane.
Well, if you buy a jalopy, that's in, quote, disrepair.
But the fact that there were cameras all over it, so you got views from all over the place.
Or is he trying to say, oh no, I had all those cameras to videotape my first flight. Was this the first flight in this new plane? Well, new
Or
to
he could have
him.
said, you know, I was going to do some like flying over top of things and I could catch it. So we'll see where the investigation leads on this one.
Good news is good news.
I have good news on good news on good news.
Good news, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get to some good news.
That's what I got for y'all today.
Okay, so what's the good news?
And the good news is
Let's hear it.
All right, story number one for today's good news. There's a semi-annual fundraiser for gamers called Games Done Quick, where people do speed runs and try and beat games as quickly as possible while fans donate. And their latest event raised a record amount of money for the Prevent Cancer Foundation. Happened last week, raised over $3.4 million.
Wow.
Incredible, and congratulations.
Our second good news story is about earlier this month, someone in China spotted a tiny dog clinging to the side of a cliff. And it looked like he was about to fall, but thankfully, firefighters showed up just in time, rappelled down the cliff, and saved the dog. And the best thing is they got it all on video.
That's fantastic.
It all happened on New Year's Day, and the dog has already been adopted out.
And this is a really cool story about Walt Disney World. They always put up those massive gingerbread house displays for the holidays. Well, then people were wondering, what happens after?
Well, they just released a video explaining what they do with all of that gingerbread and decorations at the end of the holiday season.
After we break down every piece of cookie, candy, and cute chocolate character, each gingerbread display is dismantled and brought to our tree farm. There, local Florida bees get to feast on sweets until every bit is gone. This helps the declining bee population by keeping them well fed during the winter months when food sources are harder to find. The wooden structures used to build the displays are then washed so we can reuse them during the next holiday season.
Oh, that's just such a great idea, right? Knowing that the bee population has been struggling over the years.
And I know you might be thinking, oh, why don't they just eat the gingerbread? But I mean, it's been out on display for probably over a month. So this is one way to sort of, help pay it forward and help all these bees.
Yum. Science. It's not rocket science.
Check it out. I blinded us with science.
We've got some science news from the past week. In this first story, the doomsday clock is staying right where it's set.
The members of the Science and Security Board find the world to be no safer than it was last year at this time. And therefore, we have decided to set the doomsday clock once again at 100 seconds to midnight. The doomsday clock continues to hover dangerously, reminding us how much work is needed to ensure a safer and healthier planet.
By the way, 100 seconds to midnight is the worst that it's ever been. So now they've had the same setting 2 years in a row.
Well, and they're citing nuclear risks, threat of climate change, disruptive technologies, and the pandemic as reasons why they're not moving it. Hey, SpaceX just put its 2000th Starlink satellite into orbit, and a huge half-mile asteroid zipped past Earth this past Tuesday. For reference, Don't Look Up is supposed to be the movie that was on Netflix that came out a little while ago. The asteroid in that one is supposed to be 3 to 6 miles wide. So we do know about this one, though, and it missed us by about 1 million miles, which is about 4 times the distance to the moon.
It's all good. Nothing to be worried about. Hey, music news, Casio has released a new keyboard that can sing. Here's what that sounds like.
Can you hear my voice?
So it uses vocal synthesis where a robotic voice can sing any lyrics that you punch in. So if you want to create a song with some, singing that sounds robotic in it, you can do that.
It just sounds like auto-tune sometimes there.
Yeah, a little bit.
Kind of scary. Hey, and bald men, it's time to rejoice. Researchers announced that they were able to grow a thick tuft of hair on a mouse. And they say that could actually lead to a stem cell-based cure for baldness someday. At what cost? How much is this going to cost?
You're talking about the cost. Meanwhile, I'm thinking about a mouse running around with like an Elvis do. Or like a long mullet.
Do they have to gel it to keep it out of his eyes?
Is it getting picked on by the other mice now? They're like, well, how come you have hair and we don't have hair? I just have this vision of him like a bouffant hairdo.
He's now the king of the mice.
He's the king of the mice, based all on the hair. There's Last Week in Science. Well, we've seen lots of stories about people on planes behaving badly, so you have to do something pretty dumb to stand out these days. Like this guy, he's a former college football player who's in big trouble.
So his name is Shane. He was flying Delta first class earlier this month from Ireland to New York It's literally just a comedy of errors. So first off, he had to be told dozens of times to keep his mask on during the flight, which was about 8 hours. I mean, I know it's long, but unless you're eating, you have to keep your mask on. He also kept kicking the seat of the person in front of him. And then he threw an empty can at another passenger's head.
Yeah, and it doesn't even stop there. While they were serving dinner, he got up from his seat to complain about the food, pulled his pants and underwear down, and mooned a flight attendant along with several other passengers.
So then the pilot came out to talk to the guy at one point. And during that exchange, apparently, Shane put his own hat on the pilot's head and then threatened to beat him up. Like he was being buddies. Here, have my hat, and then I will fight you.
No word on whether he had been drinking or not. Somehow I feel alcohol may have been a factor in this. The flight almost got diverted to another airport, but ended up landing in New York. And during final approach, he refused to stay in his seat. It turns out he was on his way to Florida to start a new job as a soccer coach at Daytona Beach.
So that doesn't sound like a great spot for him to go, that party town.
Not clear if he's going to still have that job or not, but he could be in serious trouble for all of this.
Yeah, 20 years in jail because he interfered with a flight crew, which is considered a felony.
We should add, too, he's a big guy, so I'm sure quite intimidating. He was a kicker at Peru State College in Nebraska last year. He's listed at 6'4" and 250 pounds. A big man, and somebody that big getting out of control, that's a scary situation.
It can be intimidating, especially for some of these crew members, right? Who, are much shorter and smaller than he is.
Not sure all the mitigating factors here. It'll obviously be worked out now with investigators and authorities. And I'm sure they'll end up probably just giving him a massive fine or maybe banning him from flying for a while, but he could be facing some jail time too.
And now it's time for
Random facts.
1, 2, 3, 4.
So the phrase cut to the chase, where does that come from? Well, the origins are from silent films in that era when movies were usually long love stories that ended with a thrilling chase scene. So people would say, cut to the chase, and it meant skip all the boring details, get to the exciting stuff.
Yeah, I want to get to the part where, he's got to save her because she's tied to the railroad tracks.
Yeah, get to the chase.
Hey, do you know that Florida, which is considered the Sunshine State, actually has more indoor tanning salons than they have McDonald's locations?
Well, you got to get that base tan going so you don't burn, I guess. Even though Nevada is most famous for its legalized gambling, it doesn't have a lottery. Lotteries have been illegal in Nevada since the state's constitution was ratified back in 1864.
I mean, considering everything else that is legal there.
Right? You can do anything else.
You can't buy a lottery.
It's not a lottery ticket.
And finally, if you ever get to go to the moon someday, you will find 96 bags of pee, poop, and vomit.
Be careful where you walk.
They were left there by the astronauts from the Apollo missions because they were trying to reduce the weight of the shuttle so that they could bring home, moon rocks and other samples from the moon. So they had to leave something behind.
Everything had to balance, and apparently didn't feel like, pooping and scooping. We've got 7 food-related arguments that couples have, and here are some of the big ones.
42% said their partner doesn't cook as often as they like them to. One of us followed a recipe incorrectly. That was 42%.
What to cook for dinner was 35% of arguments. What groceries to buy, 37%. And what the grocery budget should be got 20% of the vote.
And 10% said they fight about who should just cook dinner in the first place. But here's the thing. The biggest thing is 45% of couples argue about where to go out to eat. And I think that's a pretty conservative estimate. Do you and your wife ever have issues over that?
It's more or less, where to go, right? Because, we have a lot of restaurants here in Chatham-Kent. And I'll be honest, over the last 2 years, we've ordered out a lot of food. Part of it is, being a little bit lazy maybe, but we kind of made it a Friday night thing for the longest time during the pandemic where we chose different restaurants. We even did the Royal Canadian Legion because they have a Friday thing that they do there. They have different food every week. So sometimes it's just, okay, what are you feeling like? Right? Do you want to go here? Well, I don't know. I don't know if I want that.
What are you in the mood for? Are you in the mood for like a burger? Or you want pizza? Or do you want like fish or something more fancy?
The wildest stat in all of this, though, 43% of people say they've actually dumped someone because they were a bad cook. Really? How about you just take up the mantle then? Or learn cooking together?
Sounds like a great couples activity, a cooking class together.
Good morning, it's Dave and Cheryl, and we've got a couple of great examples of law and disorder for you this morning. This first story, we've seen a million ones about grandparents getting scammed out of money, so it's pretty cool to see someone turn the tables.
This 73-year-old woman on Long Island got a call last Thursday that was supposedly from her grandson. The guy on the phone claimed that he needed bail money because he'd been arrested for drunk driving. The thing is, though, Gene does have a grandson. He is not anywhere near old enough to drive yet, so she knew it was a scam, but she decided to play along. She was able to get them to call her and have a back and forth with them, told them, yeah, no problem, I'll give you the money. And eventually she got a call from a guy claimed to be her son's lawyer. Said he needed $8,000 to bail him out and that he would send a bail bondsman to come pick the money up from her. And she said, sure, no problem. Except that she had been in contact with police since that very first phone call. And they actually set up a sting operation. So when the guy showed up, the cops were hiding inside. And when she handed him an envelope stuffed with paper towels and he walked away, he got tackled in the front yard by cops who came charging out of the house.
That is amazing.
I watched the video this morning. It was fantastic. The scammer is a guy who's 28. Not clear if he was pretending to be all the people he talked to or if he was just one of the people involved in this scam operation.
Now facing a lot of charges. Hey, a 46-year-old by the name of Michael, he's facing some charges. He works as an elementary school teacher in South Dakota, lives with his 73-year-old mom. Well, last week, he made a big pan of brownies before bed. Mom found them the next morning and decided, I'm going to take them off to my card game at the local senior center.
Wait. Without asking? Those are my brownies.
Well, what she didn't realize is they were very strong pot brownies.
Ooh, that's even worse.
Yeah, Michael had just gotten back from a trip to Colorado where he picked up a bunch of THC butter and cooked half a pound into the brownies. Well, 911 started getting calls around 8 that night about multiple seniors who thought they'd been poisoned. Turns out they were just really high. Recreational marijuana is still illegal, though, in South Dakota, so police figured out what had happened, showed up at his school the next day, and arrested him right there.
Oh, my God, they arrested him at work?
Yeah, at work. He's facing charges of possession of a controlled substance, which is a felony. He could face up to 5 years in jail and a $10,000 fine.
It blows my mind that south of the border, marijuana is totally legal in some spots and extremely illegal in other spots. 25% of us say we are horrible at this. What do you think it is? So not all of us, but 25% of us say we are horrible at this.
Parking?
What kind of parking?
Parallel parking.
That is it.
You got it. Congratulations. What's your name?
Joanne.
And are you good at parallel parking?
Never.
You never do it?
Until I can drive in. I go to a parking lot. Never.
You're the one circling around then?
I am. 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, you and me both, Joanne. We're the ones that are circling around, always looking, always searching. Or you know what I do, Joanne? I just park way out. I park far enough away. Just get a little walk in.
Yes.
So, Joanne, you could have totally lied to us right there and been like, yeah, I'm a pro. I do that all the time.
But I'm not.
I do it for fun on a Friday. I have nothing better to do. I drive around and just find places to parallel park.
Joanne, is there a certain aspect of it that you find intimidating, or?
The car in front of me and the car behind me.
You've been listening to Dave and Cheryl's favorite moments of the week.